Step back. I got a chainsaw. You know what's coming. Stick around. Why, hello there YouTube, and welcome to a brand new horror talk. And it has been ages since we last did an episode of this show. I think it was back in like May when we did, or was it June? The last one I can ever recall doing was, in fact no, it was the Alien franchise, not Werewolf Mythos. And I didn't do one in June, so yeah, here's this month's horror talk. And the franchise we are discussing this month is, of course, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. So this is a cannibalistic horror slasher franchise that goes way back to the year of 1974. And it's a horror series, a horror franchise which has stood the test of time, gaining multiple sequels, a remake, and a prequel. So, let's begin with the first, where it all began. So, it all started in 1974 with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Written and directed by Tobe Hooper and co-written by Kim Henkel. And this starred Marilyn Burns, Paul A. Partrain, Edwin Neal, Jim Saibo, and Gunnar Henson. So this was a low-budget independent film from 1974. Now, this film, it was banned in 1974 for many reasons, which we will get into now. First of all, they stated that this film is based on a true story. It's not necessarily based on a true story, it is based on true events. You see, it was all inspired by the notorious case of Ed Gein. And of course, if you know the history of Ed Gein, you know that he dug up graves, skinned bodies, made furniture out of human skin, and bowls out the top of human skulls, and was making a human suit made out of female bodies, you know, female bodysuit. And Ed Gein was the inspiration for many killers, such as Norman Bates, Hannibal, well no, not Hannibal Lecter, but Buffalo Bill, and of course Leatherface. And of course Leatherface was, you know, inspired by Ed Gein and his, you know, his obsession with human skin, wearing human skin. So yeah, that's what inspired this. So the events of Ed Gein inspired this film. The rest of it's all fiction, but was passed off as some documentary sort of film. Now, the quality of the film is also good. I mean, it looks low budget because it is. The quality of picture looks crap, but I think it actually looks quite arty and stuff, because the artistic quality kind of makes it have a sense of realism. So this film, it was a slow build, but it quickly picked up. And once we saw the look of Leatherface, see, this was some sort of harmless road film, till they picked up this hitchhiker called the Hitcher, and realised he was a bit of a nutter when he cut the guy in the wheelchair, and then they kicked him out. And then they came across that house and looking for directions or something, because they were out of gas. But yeah, that's when the film starts to get its horror tropes. You know, Leatherface, we meet him, the notorious psychopathic killer wearing the face of a human. Now, Leatherface, I believe he was originally named Jebediah Jackson Ted Sawyer. definitely the Sawyer family in the original franchise. Yeah, a lot of him is unknown. We just know that he's some inbred or disfigured hillbilly that wears the face of another person. And this character was played by Gunnar Henson. So, of course, the realism of this film and the graphic violence, which today is considered very tame because, well, it is very tame given the stuff we watch today and the horrors that are made today. But back in 1974, this was considered very graphic, very horrific, and yeah, this film got banned. So, yeah, and of course, when a film gets banned, it just makes it even more popular, and this film did gain a cult following, and, you know, since then the ban in the film has been lifted. It got banned over here, it got banned in America, it got banned in many other countries, including Germany, France, Australia, I think. But yeah, like I said, this film is very tame considered to the stuff we have today. Films these days that are banned are like The Human Centipede and you know, what else that I can think of the top of my head. Salo and all those kinds of films, you know. So yeah, this film was shot on a low budget, shot in a number of days, and this was shot in the hot Texas sun of 1973. And of course, there is the notorious dinner table scene. Now, apparently, the set absolutely reeked of body odour and sweat and many other terrible odours, and a lot of people were heat stroked and were pretty much going loopy. So during that scene, a lot of the acting was real. It was very, very real. So, you know, if you were unaware and you were thinking they're just one hell of great actors, well, no, that's not acting. Gunnar Henson as well in the final scene when he's chasing the final girl, Sally. Ends where he waved the chainsaw around in great frustration. That wasn't acting. Apparently Gunnar Henson literally lost his mind because he was so roasting hot in all that stuff he was wearing, the leather face, the suit, and waving it around. At one point the crew had to back away and like shout over to him, telling him to calm down and stop, because he was that out of control with his chainsaw wielding. And also, Gunnar Henson, you gotta give credit to him because he literally had one costume throughout the entire film, and his absolutely reeked of sweat because he weren't allowed to wash his costume because of it might fall apart or something. You know, he had to wear the same apron and the same shirt throughout the whole filming of this film, except for the final dinner scene when he gets to wear a different face and a different suit. But, yeah, he was literally driven nuts by the heat of that one. And they filmed this in the summer of 1973. And, yeah, this was, that must have been really hard for them. I think if I was, I don't know if the crew or anyone felt sorry for the cast with all the heat, but, yeah, it must have been mental. And of course, Tobe Hooper, here's a little fact here. Tobe Hooper actually wanted this film to be marketed as a PG. He did. He honestly wanted this film to be PG. But of course, the classification boards and what have you would not do that. And it was banned. And yeah, this film does have graphic scenes. A lot that are considered tame now, like when we first meet Leatherface, we see him clobber a guy on the head with a hammer, and then we see him hang a girl onto a meat hook, and then we see him wield a chainsaw around. But this film isn't actually as gory as you think. There isn't a lot of gore in this film. A lot of it is all after effects, like aftermath, like, you know, things that have happened off screen, leaving it for the audience's imagination, like furniture made out of human bones and stuff, and we never actually see the whole process happen on screen, but it's left to our imagination. We do see a kill count in this film, and then there, of course, there isn't just Leatherface, there is the rest of the Sawyer family. There's the Hitcher we saw, whose death was pretty hilarious in the film when he was chasing after her with Leatherface and he got ran and hit by that truck. Then there was the father of the family, and then there was Grandpa, who looked like a dummy. In fact, he looked like a zombie. You know, he was like all like lifeless and everything. And yeah, this film was just nuts. It was nuts and crazy. And yeah, this film, with it being banned and all, it was about 12 years before they made a sequel, which they did. So 1974 we had the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then in 1986 we got the sequel, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, which was again directed by Tobe Hooper and written this time by L.M. Kit Carson. And this film, it stars Caroline Williams, Dennis Hopper, Dennis Hopper, Jim Sidbow again. He played Chop Sawyer. That's what the father is called, Chop Top Sawyer. And we had Bill Johnson in the role of oh no, hang on. No, the father in it, he was the cook. I'm looking at it all wrong here on the wiki page. No, Jim Sidbow reprised his role as a cook. Drayton Sawyer, and we got Bill Johnson as Leatherface, and then we got Bill Moseley as Chop Top, this time replacing the Hitcher. And we all know Bill Moseley from Rob Zombie's Firefly franchise, and is reprising his role in the upcoming Free From Hell. And we got Bill Johnson as Leatherface this time. Gunnar Henson, I guess, was put off from the role by the extreme heat he experienced this time. And we also got Lou Perryman and Chris Dordas or whatever. And yeah, so this one, with the first film being very graphic and very serious, they thought, let's lighten the humour a bit and make this a comedy slasher horror. And it was, and I actually thought it was good. This is definitely the best sequel in the franchise. Oh, and of course, my rankings. How many films there are in the franchise? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8 films in the franchise. I put the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the first film, at number 1 in my rankings. So number 1 is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. So this one, it focused on like a radio DJ called Renita, played by Caroline Williams. She was like a radio DJ. She hears some people get killed in the opening scene. Then she gets caught up in the whole dilemma of the Sawyer family, and they're all nutters. We also have Dennis Hopper, who's like some sheriff in it, some copper, I think. Either way, he's taking matters into his own hands, and he gets not 1, but 2 chainsaws. And yeah, so this one, Leatherface's face is different again in this one. He wears a different human face, and the faces never look the same in the whole films. They always look different, always brown, leathered human faces. There is one scene in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 where Leatherface cuts off a guy's face, and puts it on the DJ. I can't remember her name now. What was her name? Vanetti or something. Puts it on her face. Yeah. Another character who I feel was a bit of a weirdo in it was Chop Top, played by Bill Moseley. You know, how he put a coat hanger on a lighter and then scratched a bit of his scalp off and ate it. That was weird. Especially when we find out he had a metal plate on his head and he'd been picking off all the skin. Weird. We still had Grandpa in it, the Grandpa in it from the first film. But yeah, this was a pretty crazy sequel, but a fun watch. And it had a soundtrack, well, it had the Oingo Boingo song No One Lives Forever featured in this film. Yeah, nutty sequel, but a good one. The best sequel, I'd say. So I'm putting the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 at number 2 in my rankings of these films. Texas Chainsaw. Yeah, after that we didn't really get another Texas Chainsaw Massacre film for at least another few years. About 4 years later in 1990 we were given the third installment, which was titled Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. This time Tobe Hooper doesn't write or have any involvement with the directing or the writing. It's still credited as one of the creators of the characters. So this one was written by David J. Sco and directed by Jeff Burr. This one starred Kate Hodge, William Butler, Ken Foree, Tom Hudson, and also starred Viggo Mortensen, Joe Unger Summit, R.A. and R.A. Milhofer or something. Professional wrestler. So this was the third installment of the Texas Chainsaw franchise. This time Leatherface was played by professional wrestler R.A. Milhofer, I can't pronounce his name, and also had the stunt double coordinator Kane Hodder. Yeah, Kane Hodder, who we all know as Jason in the later Friday films. He was the stunt coordinator in this film. So this one, it focuses on a couple that are on a road trip and then they find themselves on the menu of Leatherface. Leatherface, of course, is, well, the inbred face wearer again, and he goes all out on a murderous rampage. We get some comedic moments in there, some humorous moments. But this one is considered somewhat of a bit of a reboot. It is the sequel to the first two films and is the third installment, and yeah, we see Leatherface with his wielding chainsaw, and again it has the gore, the violence, the cannibalism, just pretty much the same as the first two. Bit of rehashes there, but this time it's a couple. It focuses on a couple, not a group of people. The first film focused on a group of people on a road trip. Then the second one, that was pretty static. There was no road trip involved in that. The third one, they went back to a couple on a road trip, not a group of people, but the road trip stuff in there. And yeah, I have seen this one, and it is a good sequel too. And I would put this at number 3. Yeah, number 3 in my rankings of the Texas Chainsaw franchise. So there is the third film. After that we didn't get another film till 5 years later in the year 1995. So, 1995, they gave us the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation, which of course was written and directed by Kim Henkel, who co-wrote the original film with Tobe Hooper and wrote and directed this fourth installment. And I'm sorry, but this one was just bad. I mean, first of all, we make Leatherface a drag queen. This starred Renee Zellweger, Matthew McConaughey, and Robert Jacks. And playing Leatherface in this one, we had who played Leatherface in this? Robert Jacks as Junior Slaughter and Leatherface. This one really went over the top with the slapstick. I mean, it was poorly received, but I think it has gained a cult status over the years. Has it? Has it gained a cult following? This was like one of the early films from Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger. Matthew McConaughey, he kind of made it watchable, so he sort of saved it because his performance in this film was nuts. He was one of the Sawyer family. This was like a whole new next generation, though. I mean, we had Leatherface still, whether it was the same Leatherface. But yeah, I don't know what the hell was going on with Leatherface. Was Leatherface gender confused? I've only seen this film once because it is that bad, but I found it awfully good at the same time. Yeah, it's just crazy. But it's definitely not the worst one in the franchise, because I put this at number 7 in my Texas Chainsaw film ranking. But this film pretty much killed the franchise for many years until 2003. We got a remake from Michael Bay's production company Dune Pictures, and that was titled The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is a remake, obviously, I've just said. This was written by Scott Koser and directed by Marcus Nespel, and starred Jessica Biel, Jonathan Tucker, Erica Lehens or something, Mike Vogel, Eric Bolful, and Arlie Ermy. You know, the crazy commander from Full Metal Jacket. He was in this, and this time the family went from being called the Sawyers to the Hewitts. I don't know why they changed their name to the Hewitts. Whether it was, I don't know, but they changed the family name from the Sawyers to the Hewitts. And Leatherface in this one was played by Andrew Brakinski or something. This was my introduction into the Texas Chainsaw franchise. Before that, I knew of the film, but then I thought, this is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This was the first one I saw in the franchise. After that, I got hooked on the Texas Chainsaw franchise, and I started watching them all. This one, it was a pretty decent remake. I remember watching this and not being scared at all by it. There was a lot of graphic violence in there, a lot more gore in it. We saw a lot more gore in this. We saw the Hewitt family, which wasn't just 3 people this time. It was like one guy without his legs, and we had Sheriff Hoyt. Yeah, and then we had Jebediah Hewitt, which was, I think, the guy in the wheelchair, played by David Dorfman. We have the Hitcher again in this, but recast, played by Lauren German, who in this one, I believe, blew her head off in the opening scene and was a victim this time. Yeah, so this was a pretty graphic remake, but I don't think it was banned because, like I say, by then we'd become pretty tolerant of all that stuff. The film was still set in the original setting of the first film, the original film. It was still set in Texas, 1973. But of course, this wasn't shot for shot. They made a lot of changes in this, such as the scenery of the house, the family, the look of Leatherface. Yeah, and it was a lot darker, this one. And yeah, I don't think anyone went insane this time from the heat, because I don't think it was stood in like extreme hot weathers. But this one, it must have been fairly received, because this one in 2006 gained a follow-up, not a sequel but a prequel. Before we get to that one, I put the remake at number. Do you know what? I'm putting the remake at number 5. Number 5 in my rankings of the Texas Chainsaw films. So yeah, 2006, the remake got a prequel titled The Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning, or Texas Chainsaw: The Beginning, and this was a prequel, as I've said already. This one was written by Sheldon Turner and directed by Jonathan Liebesman or something, and it starred Jordana Brewster, Taylor Handley, Doreen Barrett or something, Matt Bomber, Lee Trigson or something, and also had Army in it. And this was a prequel. It started off in 1939, and we see the birth of Leatherface. In this, he's inbred, and his mother gives birth to him in the slaughterhouse where she works, and then we see him get put in the trash, and he's found by the Hewitts, and raised, and becomes the notorious Leatherface. In this, though, we didn't actually see him wear a whole human face, not until the second act of the film. Andrew Bry, the guy from the previous film, reprised his role, and in this one we actually see him, how he went from wearing a muzzle to wearing someone's face in this one. So we saw him become the face swearer, we saw the guy in the wheelchair lose his legs, we saw Sheriff, what's his name now? Sheriff Hoyt become the sheriff. Turns out he just stole the sheriff's identity and became the sheriff. And this one, again, was graphic and horrific and scary, and, well, not scary, but still graphic and violent. Still had the kills in there, and in this one it's like pretty much the antagonist one, because it pretty much ends where Leatherface kills the final girl and he returns back home, and we get a bit of like a voiceover narration saying between 1969 and 1973, because we start off in 1939, then we time jump to 1969, and it takes place 4 years before the remake. So yes, the I don't know if it was poorly received or not, but they never made another one to this. So there we were, the Texas Chainsaw franchise pretty much off screen for... Oh, and I put the Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning at number 6 in my rankings. So number 6, Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. And then in 2013, we had another film out called Texas Chainsaw 3D. Now, this, I believe, was a direct sequel to... I mean, the filming for it began in the summer of 2011 and it was released worldwide in the January of 2013. This film, I think, was a direct sequel to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the first film, because in the opening scene we see clips and shots of the original film, and then we follow straight on where somehow the Sawyers have more family with them, have more people there, including a cameo from Gunnar Henson, and then the sheriff is willing to like go quietly, take Leatherface in quietly and willingly. Then the locals take matters into their own hands and burn the place, and one of the people, they take a baby from the family and raise it as their own. Then we have a time jump 20 years, and we find out this stars Alexandra Daddario or something, Danier or something, Trey Songs, Scott Eastwood, yes, Scott Eastwood, Clint Eastwood's son, and Tom Berry, Paul Reed, Bill Moseley, yep, he comes back, and yeah, like I said, Gunnar Henson has a cameo in this. So our main protagonist is Heather, played by the Alexandra girl. Well, she's Heather Miller, but her real name was Edith Rose Sawyer, and we find out that she's actually the cousin of Leatherface, long lost cousin of Leatherface. Leatherface now identified as Jebediah Sawyer, played by Dan Yeager, and in this one we see Heather's friends go for out for a weekend or something, and then she finds out she's got this inheritance from a grandmother she never knew she had, living in the basement, a cousin she never knew she had, Jebediah Sawyer, who is the Leatherface for this film, and yeah, at first he's trying to kill her, but once realises that they're cousins and they're related, she then she embraces the Sawyer gene and becomes a bit nuts and lives with them. The sheriff at the beginning, who was wanting to do this by the book, when the comeuppance comes for the vigilantes in this, he doesn't lift a finger because it's like justice gets served for them. And in this, Leatherface is kind of a protagonist himself. It's like, yeah, I mean, there's flaws with this film. There are. Now, if this is meant to be a direct sequel to the first film, and the opening scene followed directly on from the first film, and the baby Edith, and then becoming Heather, grows up, and she looks like she's in her early 20s or late teens, and that means it should be set in somewhat the 90s. The plot and timeline it didn't make sense. The timeline did not make sense. Why would a cop have a iPhone in the 90s with a live stream feed? And why the hell would you go in there without backup when you know there's a chainsaw wielding nutter around? And yeah, he gets killed and has his face ripped off. It's his own doing. Yeah, this film was just... The timeline and the plot didn't really make sense to me. If anything, this was somewhat of a cash grab or an excuse to have the film in 3D. Because, to me, this was a bad one. It was the worst one, and so bad. I mean, I guess the acting was good, but other than that, the story was just lazy and flat. So, you know, I'm putting this at number 8 in my rankings of the Texas Chainsaw franchise. So, yeah, they did confirm a sequel for this, but I don't think it happened because, well, I think it was poorly received and panned. However, yeah, and I think this pretty much killed the theatrical releases of these films, because in 2017 we got well, I don't know, I think it was a limited release or of Leatherface. Yes, 2017 we got Leatherface, which is a prequel to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974. So Leatherface. This one was directed by Julian Murray and Alexandra Brustillo or something, and written by Seth M. Sherwood, and starred Stephen Dorff and Lily Taylor, and Toby Hooper. He was credited as the executive producer for this film. This was probably one of the last films he had any involvement with doing, because Toby Hooper, of course, we all know is dead now, because, well, he died in August 2017, so just before the release of this film. So this one, we find Leatherface in this. We find Stephen Dorff as Texas Ranger Hall Hartman, and we also get Vanessa Gress as Elizabeth, Lizzie, I think the love interest of Jebediah Sawyer. This one played by British actor Sam Strike. In this, Jebediah Jackson Sawyer, of course, we find out, turns out to be Leatherface. I mean, there is another character in this film. There is another character in this film called Ike, who is big, a bit slow, a bit here, but we believe he's going to be... It makes us think he's going to become Leatherface, but no, it's Jackson who becomes Leatherface. And turns out he's not deformed or inbred. Well, he doesn't look deformed or inbred, but he gets shot in the face, and his face like cheek blown off, and so that's how he got disfigured, why he ends up wearing faces. In this we see his whole backstory of how he became the cannibalistic chainsaw face wielding killer we all know as Leatherface in this. At first we see at the beginning the Sawyers are a bit of a nutty family. Little Jackson Sawyer is wearing the face of a cow in it, and the family get arrested or something for some murder. I can't quite remember, but Jackson Sawyer gets institutionalized and raised, and at first he's like a protagonist, but then he turns into the antagonist, and the film pretty much ends where he's making his face, his first ever face that he wears, kills the girl who was one of the nurses who felt for him, because at this point when he got his face blown off, I guess he lost all sanity. Didn't speak normal again. There's like a scene where he's in a shootout and he does get... It goes through one cheek and out the other. So that's how he became Leatherface. And I thought this was a good prequel. It was definitely a great prequel. Probably a little better than the Texas Chainsaw The Beginning from 2006. I just like how this got Leatherface and made him a normal, regular looking person, to how he evolved into this crazed killer we all know. Now Leatherface, yeah, he's seen as the antagonist of the films, but he's sort of a victim too, because Leatherface, he is innocent, but he then becomes... He's sort of controlled by his family, the Sawyers, and is driven to evil. So yeah, I put Leatherface at number 4 in my rankings. So for my film ranking of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films. It is at number 8, Texas Chainsaw 3D. Number 7, Texas Chainsaw Massacre The Next Generation. Number 6, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre The Beginning. Number 5, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Remake. Number 4, Leatherface. Number 3, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. Number 2, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. And at number 1, the original. It's the best one because without that, we wouldn't have the rest of the franchise. So this franchise, to this day, has still gone on. We still have films. This franchise is like, you know, gone down in horror history, like A Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween. In fact, this was like a format for the slasher film. I mean, we had Psycho like 14 years before, but this started, you know, this in the early 70s, you know, I mean, started to put slashers on the map. We had 2, to my knowledge, that were out that year. In 1974, we had the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Black Christmas, and they were the format for the slasher genre, how it was to come. To me, I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre set up the final girl trope. Halloween set up the whole cliches we have, like the virgin survives, etc. You know, so Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you know, horror, I feel, owes a lot to this franchise because it did shape horror, it did change horror, you know, especially the slasher genre as we see it today. So the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, that's it. So yeah, I think that's all I've got to say for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise and this month's Horror Talk. So I've gone on a bit now, and my voice is beginning to strain, so let me know down in the comments below, what's your favourite Texas Chainsaw film? And if you like, share all that down in the comments below. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to share with your friends. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and to hit that notification bell if you're new here. All my social media links are down below in the description, so you can check all that out. I've been Random Ross. This has been Horror Talk on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. So yeah, that's it for this video. So until next time, don't have nightmares.